I'm tired of not setting myself up for success. My entire adult life, I have sent out Christmas cards. It's the one time of the year that I get to connect with everyone. I actually get off to a great start earlier in the year, but Michael decides to surprise me with a 3-week birthday trip. It's a big birthday. There's a month left. I still have time. Just when I have everything planned, set, and ready to go, Michael changes the itinerary and moves the trip up 3 weeks. Do I take it all with me? Or does no one get a Christmas card? Hey chickies, welcome. No one got a card last year. Okay, well, my mom got a card. I had set myself up so well, but in the end, I didn't get it done. I made a decision on that trip. I would never allow this to happen to myself again. This year I'm starting off right, and today I want to share with you a way to jump right into the deep end and get a lot done. I have 4 ideas on how you can create depth and texture in your backgrounds for your cards. And if you're not really into doing Christmas cards right now, that's totally fine. Just adjust them for whatever your needs are. The best part about this video is I'm teaming up with 4 of my really good crafty friends. Together, the 5 of us have 20 cards for 2020. We're calling it the Card Bank. We're always going to be here. It's a great resource for you. Lots of techniques, tips, ideas. Come back, make a withdrawal whenever you need some inspiration. We're linking to the next person at the end, and it's also going to be in the description below. We have a lot to cover. Let's dive right in. Before we get to all the really fun stuff, we need to lay a foundation. So we're going to create some backgrounds. You use some acrylic paint, a gel plate, and a brayer. Feel free to use whatever you want, whatever makes you happy and how you like to create backgrounds. Go ahead and do that. I used just a little bit too much paint here. And I do like to create with 2 gel plates. Of course, you can do this with just 1. 2 makes it a lot easier because sometimes when you are waiting on a print, you want to keep moving rather than just sitting there waiting for 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes. You can see how quick I'm actually able to fill a full sheet. I am going to cut these down a little bit so that they are more like panels on my cards. I ended up creating 10 full sheets of green in just 6 minutes. I did add some red for a total of 68 card backgrounds in under 10 minutes. I just wanted to go with the base color to start because we're going to do all the fun stuff and lots of layering. We're going to start by adding a little interest by adding some paint to our gel plate through a stencil. Added a little tiny bit too much to this great stencil by scrapbook.com. Just wanted to get some trees onto the gel plate, and then we're going to lift those up just so that we can add interest to a different print. When you have your colored prints, I love having leftover white spaces in them because it allows you to really add other prints and other interesting texture and character to your actual background. See, this one's a little too green, so we're adding some different colors. I'll probably end up adding a little white to that as well as I brayer off white from other prints. Look at this. I love the mix here. The white really serves the purpose. It feels like snow. So don't just think that a print isn't right. If you're missing things, missing gaps, that always adds interest. Another way to add some different stenciling is partial stenciling with a makeup sponge. Go direct to paper. Now you can do this on any type of background, whether it's watercolor or whatever. Acrylic paint sits on top of the surface, so it's a great thing to add. Well, that's the easy way. Now let's build a print before the pull. We're going to start off with some magenta and gold acrylic paint. I'm going to brayer them out a little bit individually before blending them together so that they kind of have their own character on the plate. Once I'm happy with the coverage, I'm going to take this boho stencil, and this is from a new stencil company to me, A Colorful Life Designs. Got them linked in the description below. Really some fun stencils. I'm taking the positive image from the stencil actually off the plate by burnishing my hand through the backside of the print that we had just worked on. The nice thing about acrylic paint is it layers on top of itself, so you can layer colors on top of colors, especially when they're opaque, adding a little bit more interest, just adding a tiny touch of brown before adding the white. Now, the reason we're using white is we need a wet paint to pull off the dried print underneath. I did allow it to dry in between while working on some other things off camera. You want to get that brayered out pretty well. Don't want to over brayer it because you'll muddy it up if anything is isn't fully dry. And here's where we're going to add some of that leftover white, lightening up some of those darker areas on other prints before we're going to end up playing with those later on. Here's the pull. This is always my favorite part, and look at how beautiful this is. This stencil, it reminded me a little bit of Eastern European glass ornaments, and this cut down made some of the most beautiful cards. I absolutely love the pink, kind of a little bit of orange as well as brown. They work so well together for an unexpected Christmas card. Now that we did a simple one layer, how about we add multiple stencils and different looks? I have a little bit of leftover paint that's actually dried on the plate, so I'm adding the boho. I was trying to get anything to come up, but nothing did. But just by pressing the stencil down into that, I was able to transfer some of that paint that was a little tiny bit tacky but mostly dry to the stencil, pulling it up off the plate. Adding a little bit of brown in little sides and trying to remove some of it. I didn't want it to be overly brown. I just wanted a little bit of grunge there on the plate. Using other stencils to pull up some patterning in the brown, taking some drywall tape, one of my favorite things to add texture with. Definitely encourage you to look around the house, see what you have to use instead of just stencils. Spraying out some reds, and then going to use the petal overlay stencil, also by a Colorful Life Designs. Love this one as well. This to me, even though it looks more like a flower, for me it works like a poinsettia. The best part about this is I'm actually pulling up the images of the floral onto another print. So we're really kind of working on two prints at once. Once I add a little bit more to the top, we'll be able to move on to the next step. The reason I wanted to pull some of the pattern away is so that you can see the stencil. Look at that. Doesn't it look cool? And that's just the beginning on that one. It's also important to be able to have a little space so that the next layer of paint can shine through. Bubble wrap is another great favorite tool of mine. Large and small, it adds very interesting texture. It has that little bit of wrinkle in a shape form that really looks cool on prints. Gonna use some buff and white here, both on the top and bottom. I didn't want it to be totally bright white. That's why I incorporated a little bit of the buff. And you can see here, just taking some of that white and adding it to other prints to help lighten it. I did let this sit because I wanted this to pull up completely for at least 20 minutes. Look at that, it's gorgeous. And when this is cut down, we're gonna take it to another level by adding more effects, especially to that top part. It's so pretty once cut. These two pieces look gorgeous once we add a little bit of mediums to it. And then these are, I just love these. I didn't need to do very much to those. They were so pretty. This is just the beginning. We have so much more to still cover because remember, this is part of the Christmas bank. Now we're gonna play with some fun mediums. First up, some Crackle Mediums. We're going to start with Distress Texture Paste, and this is the Crackle version. And this one is really, really smooth. It's a lot looser than I actually expected. It's probably the consistency, I would say, of face cream or mayonnaise. And I'm going to add some sparkle to that because it is just really white. So why not add some glitter right into the mix? So first I'm going ahead and put that directly through the stencil, and then I was really surprised at how much I actually needed because I wanted to have a good crackle, and the thinner application you have, the smaller the crackle. If you have it super, super thin, then you'll actually have really fine lines. And if you want big, larger crackles, then you need to have it be layered up a little bit. So I was really surprised at how much I actually used. Usually with paste, you don't use a crazy amount, but here it is after an hour. It's starting to crackle already. I'm also going to show the Nouveau Crackle Mousse. Now this is very different. It has a lot of shimmer to it. This is the Russian white, and you can see that the consistency is slightly different from the Distress one. It's a little bit more like frosting. So just moving my stencil around, you want to be careful not to lay it down into any wet areas. That's why I allowed the Distress to dry a little bit before covering it with my white poinsettias. What's left over, I'm just moving onto those little tiny pieces, and that adds the perfect little thing to these prints. I absolutely love how those cards turned out, ending up a little bit of glitter. And they're so sparkly. You can see that the Distress one absorbed the sparkle a lot more than I expected. I ended up adding sparkle on top of the Nouveau while it was wet, and it really retained that well. Look at that sparkle and shimmer from the Nouveau. You can also see that once fully dried overnight, the Nouveau really curled the paper. It really pulled it in. I went ahead and used just Nina Exact, my inexpensive cardstock. That gave it a little bit more stability. Just lightly spritz the backside of your Crackle piece so that you can actually bend it flat before matting it onto the card. And look at how beautiful this is. My white poinsettia card is one of my favorites. Next up, we're going to add a little bit of shimmer with Embellishment Mousse, and this is a really quick card. This is a fun product. You want to take some out and just kind of get it moving a little bit on your glass mat or whatever surface you're using with your palette knife. And then you're just going to take it and actually just spread it through your stencil, kind of like you're frosting a cake. Very easy to do, and you'll be surprised at how far it goes. Little touches to cards are the best ones. Sometimes you create backgrounds that are just so beautiful, you don't really need to do a whole lot to them. Here I have 2 ways of adding embossing powder that you may not have thought of: the Ranger Dabber and the Mixed Media Brush by Wow. The Mixed Media Brush by Wow is a little more like a nail polish brush, so you get a nice thick application if you want. I want a little bit of a thinner application today, so we're going to use the Dabber by Ranger. I want this to feel as organic as possible, so I'm going to keep a very light touch as I'm just zigzagging it across my paper. I added some horizontal and vertical lines, and after I cut this down, I'm making sure to kind of keep my lines in the same direction. Using some Crusty Copper Wow embossing powder. This is part of the Seth Apter line. It's kind of a textured powder, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, as well as the Sparkle Platinum by Wow as well. And the mixture of the two is very interesting. Don't be afraid to get your finger in there, rub something off it if it doesn't look right. I just wanted to add texture to this beautiful print to use that as a background for my cards. Remember me talking about adding a little bit more. Once they're cut down, you may find that you need a little bit more in different spots, because this is really the only thing that we're really adding before adding some sentiments and other die cuts. Look at how fun that is, especially on that flowered background. Little things and finishing touches are always my go-to in really pulling a card together, like splatter or corners with embossing powder. These little tiny things that are huge in cards. Without them, sometimes cards can look just a little too plain. The best part about creating cards like this is really setting yourself up for success. I sat down and I actually die cut 50 different sentiments all at once. It was really easy. This way I have this great little magic cup filled with sentiments to use when I'm ready to make cards. I have my backgrounds, I have them cut down. Now, whenever I have 20 minutes where I need a creative fix, it's very easy to just put together 5-10 cards. And when you do that in little bites, all of a sudden it's not such a daunting task. The fun part about this is you do actually have little short stacks of cards. They're not all the same, and I actually like that. Creating cards like this is just one idea. Laurel is now going to talk to you about mass producing cards as well, but she's going to approach it from a different perspective. You want to hear what she has to say in this video right here.